Yes, welcome. This is F.A.R.C critic and changing to the hip hop guards. I'm your boy Malik 16, and no, I'm still not a player, but you might still be a hater. And today is a very, very special crossover collaboration episode, and I got a very special guest here to represent that. I'm just gonna let him introduce himself, and we're gonna get into it. Who you be?
What's up? What's up, everyone? First of all, thank you, Malik. And it's a pleasure. I'm a big fan. I love your work, so thank you very much. But yeah, it's me, Uncle Lee, and I'm representing Changing of the Hip Hop Guards along with my partner, the journalist Sincere. Yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah, and basically they represent that real, that true hip hop feel. And
that's right. That's right. We represent that true hip hop feeling. Thank you for reminding me of our own tagline.
Yeah, right. And I want to thank you for letting me on your platform. Shout out to the journalist Sincere. Been a fan of y'all work for a while. Been watching the moves. I remember wondering if there'd be a lane for hip hop past 35, and here it is. So this little corner of YouTube that we occupy is for the heads.
Right. I've heard a few coin the term adult contemporary rap.
Yeah.
so yeah, that's the where we are right now, I guess.
And so the reason for this collaboration is because this album was just too big to just be another just episode thrown out there. We really want to commemorate how big a deal the album that we're talking about today is, and of course that is none other than the debut album by the late great Big Pun, Capital Punishment, which came out in 1998 this month, and it turns 25 years old this year. Monumental.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so this is category 1, where we go over the rap album, the product itself. And if you haven't already, as Uncle E mentioned, go ahead and take a moment to find, like, and subscribe to Changing to the Hip Hop Guards. And while you're at it, take a moment to also like and subscribe to F.A.R.C critic. And hit that notification bell so you can see when a new episode is up. I feel like you guys have a new episode every 4 days.
We try.
I'm trying to get back to like 2 a month. I've been on my every week grind, and y'all seem to like it. So yeah, let's jump into it. First dimension in category 1 is the quality of the production. Okay. All right, so who did the beats on this album, Uncle E? Who we got here? Let's see how many we can name.
Let's see. We got Beat Nuts.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Juju, Vic. Let's see who else. Shout out to Domingo.
At this point, I think Domingo is a force in hip hop. Yeah, so.
He was already a force. But I was always a fan of Domingo myself, man.
Yeah, me too. Shout out to Domingo. Shout out to Domingo.
So we had the Architect beats.
Yeah, the Juggernaut and Trauma.
Trauma D, right.
A lot of people that it was their first round out of production. Pun was giving a lot of people their first shots. So Young Lord is one of those people. We also have Rock Wilder on there.
Rock Wilder, man, and just also, shout out to Rock Raider, who did some scratches on there.
Yeah, rest in peace. Peace.
Yeah. Showbiz, I can't forget we had Showbiz on there.
Of course. And there's actually, as you mentioned, like names that we didn't know. There's a duo on there, Danny O and EQ. I think, and Fat Joe said these guys used to follow him to the barbershop and try to get put on, and he just lost all track of them. And he said he was looking to them up until like the 20th anniversary of this album. He was still looking for them to give them their props. So a lot of newcomers got their shine. The biggest hit off this album was produced by a newcomer who was such a no name that his production name is Nobody.
Right.
Yeah, man.
RZA. We came in.
RZA.
Yeah, the RZA. LES. Who else, man? I feel like Frank Nitty.
Yeah.
We'll mention Minnesota from the Money Boys Players, right? Peace, Minnesota. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, brothers? Y'all can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Peace, peace.
Yo, y'all caught me. I was just sitting in my car.
Yo, minute. So since you kind of short on time, let me just explain this real quick. You know, you got the anniversary of Big Pun's album, The Capital Punishment. So if you have a few minutes, he's gonna kind of, you know, ask you a little bit about your participation.
Hell yeah, let's go.
All right.
I do want to say this. It's ironic that I got you on it because I did an episode with Taz from the Alcoholics, and we did like a whole 5 minutes talking about how we don't feel like you get enough props for everything you did in hip hop. So it's just ironic that we're here right now. But
so I just came the Bronx. Like, there's 5 boroughs in New York, right? Queens took off with our shit. Brooklyn took off with our shit, and they adored it. They took care of it. The Bronx don't give a fuck. It's a certain mentality we have up here. Like for me, I was 3 years old at the gym playing tag. You see that movie, The Get Down?
Yeah.
That was all of our lives.
Yeah.
Right.
Big Pun, we grew up not giving a fuck about it. Like, it's like the terminology of prophet is never respected in his own land. And Big Pun's uncle, his name is Wimpy. Pun was Puerto Rican and Cuban. So I want to get that whole, he was just Puerto Rican, the best Puerto Rican rapper shit out of here. He's Puerto Rican and Cuban. And his uncle Wimpy was down with the Cold Crush. I think so far as like being behind stage, carrying the records, like kind of like management.
Okay.
And his aunt Angie was rolling around with them too. His aunt Angie is bad Cuban joint, right? And they were the connection for my neighborhood getting that music. So far as the Cold Crush and shit like that. So I can only imagine how that hip hop was coming directly into Pun's house.
Right.
It's his aunt and his uncle. And they're listening to Grandmaster Caz every week. So it's almost like he had direct access.
Gotcha.
Because if you know anything about hip hop, Grandmaster Caz and Melly Mel were Jay-Z and Nas when this shit was in its embryonic stages.
Right. Of course.
I didn't know, living in the Bronx, I didn't know anything was fucked up until I heard that record, The Message.
It was just normal for you.
You're talking about old Bronx, abandoned buildings Bronx.
Yes. We was on the baseball team, and that's when I first met Pun, because we was on the baseball team. Pun's uncle was our what do you call that? The coach, is that? The coach?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, Pun's uncle Wimpy.
Really?
So that was I'll never forget. There's a McDonald's across the street from Yankee Stadium. We had just finished playing, and our team wasn't shit. We was like the Bad News Bears. So when we finished playing, we went across the street. Someone had the boombox playing The Message. And I sat there and listened to that whole song, like, what the? It was at 6, 7 years old, maybe 8, 9 years old. That shit blew me away, bro.
Wow.
Shit blew me away.
I read somewhere, I think it was like the 20th anniversary. It said you didn't understand what he was doing when you did the I'm Not a Player, and he did the edited version. And you're saying I just crushed a lot.
Look, right? I've always been the black guy in the hood who's cool with the Dominicans, the Puerto Ricans, whoever it was. And Chris was like, first of all, he was Dirty Chris, because when he was young, he was wild. He was doing mad, stupid shit, getting in trouble. And he didn't really fall into money till he left the hood. But he was just a wild little Puerto Rican boy. So when I bumped into him on Southern Boulevard, shopping for some clothes, and I hear somebody making fun, like, Mark, because my grandmother used to call me out the window. That was the call. So I'm like, yo, who the fuck is this fat? First of all, I don't know nobody 300 pounds. So he's going like this. So when I walk over to him, he's like, Mark, what up, man? You don't know me now? I said, Chris, what the fuck happened to you? He broke it down. He used to work out. I think the police was chasing him, and when he jumped out the window, he broke both his legs. So he was a weightlifting guy, Papi Chulo nigga. So when he couldn't move around, that's when all the weight got on him. Wow. So when I went and I kicked it with him, we exchanged numbers. This nigga had a deal in a week.
Wow.
He called me, and that was it. We went to Mystic Studios in Staten Island and recorded I'm Not a Player. And it was a beautiful session, man. Good fucking, just good humanity. He was funny, snapped all day, played all day. I got to do 2 records with him. And that was it. Before sometime.
What's the other record?
I did New York Giants.
New York Giants on the second album. Yeah.
What happened with New York Giants was I was in California doing something for Little Kim. So I had to have somebody go on my record collection, get the sample, and bring it to a producer named Mahogany. So me and Mahogany at that time, we was doing like, we was gonna team up type shit. And Mahogany went in the studio and laid it down his way, changed my drums. I was pissed off about that. But he went, did the joint over, and that's how he got co-production on it. So that was Big Pun at MOP.
Monster.
What equipment did you use for the I'm Not a Player beat?
The ASR 10. I still, listen. Everybody comes down on me about the ASR 10. But what people don't know about music nowadays is listening to digital music kills your blood. So I'm analog forever. I don't give a fuck if they come out with the digital 209, kiss my ass, I'm not touching it. I'm analog forever.
Yo, what exactly do you mean by it kills your blood?
Well, the way that digital music interacts with your body, it makes your blood clot. Sound familiar? We don't got to go that way. So, what's your favorite record? What's one of your favorite soul records, Malik?
Favorite, just
I'm gonna say My Girl. I'm gonna say My Girl from the
days. Back in the days, growing up, what's one of your favorite records?
Okay, let's do In Between the Sheets by the Isleys.
In Between the Sheets by the Isleys. All right. So listen to In Between the Sheets by the Isleys on Bluetooth, and then listen to it on vinyl and watch how it feels when it hits you. You're gonna notice a difference.
Of course.
Okay. So I that's crazy because I'm thinking now that you mentioned soul samples, you sampled the OJ's joint, and I also read that you found a jazz instrumental and mixed that with the original OJ song to make the beat.
And Pun made sure I got paid a nice amount of money for the record. But bro, do you know that when you do the main version, that you get all of the publishing from the remix, and the monies from the remix comes to you? So before that shit happened to Lord Tariq and Peter Guns, it happened to me because the OJs took 10,000%. They ain't give me nothing.
Wow.
So off of that one record, I would have been a multi-millionaire.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
So the jazz version is Steve Kahn, Darling, Darling Baby.
Right. Wow.
That's nuts. And that was like the lead single. I think the street single was
Yes.
You Ain't a Killer. Yeah, that's crazy. Very crazy.
So when you went to work with Pun on that song, how many songs did he have? Other songs already done?
Well,
that you know of?
You know, the thing about Pun that's crazy, Pun he's a one take Willie, man. He was, and the only other person that I've seen do that is Lord Tariq. But Pun go in that booth, 1-2 takes is done. He was a natural. And it fucked me up because I couldn't put together, I'm not a player, but I fuck a lot, and you're 300-400 pounds. That's what made me miss the whole thing. Because I thought it was a dope record, but I couldn't get it. But man, he pulled that shit off, man.
So when he changed it to Crush a Lot, did that make more sense?
No. It threw me off. It threw me off even more. Bless his soul. I had so many fun times with him because he was just some fat, funny motherfucker. When we left the studio, right? Now, when I saw Pun, you see, our Puerto Ricans in the Bronx is gangsters. They are the wildest motherfuckers. Like, they're not passive. They get busy. And when I had saw him that time on Southern Boulevard, he had on a big chain, right? So, I thought he might have been in a dope game or whatever. I don't know. He might have been getting to it, but Pun. Now we in the car. We leaving the session. So this we leaving Staten Island studio, Mystic Studios for Staten Island. We headed back up to the Bronx. So we riding in his Lexus. So he's like, "Yo, Mark, man." He's calling me by my government name. He's like, "Yo, Mark, man, I got a grenade in the car." I'm like, "Oh shit, man. So what the fuck you got me in the car for?" And he always carried guns. He's a Soundview Puerto Rican. Pun was a gangster. I'm not gonna sit here. Your man Fat Joe, niggas grew up hard.
Right.
So he's like, "I got a grenade in the car," so I believe him. This nigga locks the windows and start farting. He killed us in that car. The nigga was an asshole. That was my man.
That was his grenade, huh?
That was the grenade. That nigga must have fought. He must have farted about 40 times in the car. So could you imagine being locked in the car with your homie who's 400 pounds and he just keeps farting? And we laughing, but we're crying at the same time. Like, yo, take the child locks off the window. Yo.
That's great. Yeah, listen, real quick before we let you go. When you had the pleasure of working with Pun, or you were in the studio with him, were the other guys around at that time, like Cuban and Sace? Did you get to see those guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was your take on them, man? Like Armageddon and those, you know what I mean? Like, did you see their talent and potential at that time?
They all were good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you the watered down version. Fat Joe wanted to create a Latin crew that could rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
So when Pun got his deal, he said to me, this is right before he passed. He said, "Minnie, I did what Joe wanted. Now I got my deal." He said, "Now it's time to get money." Look at his crew: Reef Rumble, Remy Martin. He had put together a whole nother team. Because Pun was all the way us, man. He was a Moreno. I mean, in the sense of
right.
A Cuban Puerto Rican that identified with his culture. Mm-hmm. Because Abuela is dark as us, so he was never on that. Sometime in New York, you get this Puerto Rican, Dominican, black beef. Like everybody loves the culture, but they don't love the niggas. But right. Pun was all the way one of us.
Dope.
Yeah, he was big on that. Even the first track, he says something like that, like "With a twist of black and proud." Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got one last question. So the connection, because I think that same year or the year before, he was on Lord Tariq and Peter Gunn's album. Was that connection through you?
We grew up together. Not Pete, because Pete is Tariq's brother-in-law. Tariq has been married to Peter Gunn's sister 80 years now. They've been married 80 years. So so Tariq, me, that was just Dirty Chris from the projects. So it's like we knew each other. It's just like a nigga got famous that you know.
Okay.
That's all it was.
So it was a no-brainer when it was time to get him on there.
Right.
It
was a no-brainer.
Gotcha.
You know?
Minnesota, we appreciate you, bro. I know you're trying to get to the beach. We ain't gonna take up too much more of your time.
Yeah, night beach. You definitely going to the night beach.
Minnesota, man. Thank you as always, man. You know, like you say all the time, home team, man. So appreciate you.
Hey, listen, peace, my brothers. And for your people that's listening, I got a project out, a solo album called Once Upon a Handshake. It's on all streaming platforms.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, we got Money Boss Players. We got mad projects out right now. All right.
Shout out your where can they find you at real quick, just so people don't want to keep up with you.
Minnesota_Money Boss on Instagram.
All right. Dope. Money Boss, man. Minnesota. Thank you very much, man. Enjoy your night. Have fun.
All right, y'all. Same way.
Home team. Peace.
All right. Peace, y'all. All right.
That was dope. Yo, his energy is crazy. He's like Lord Finesse meets Dame Dash.
Yeah, he's really dope though, man.
So we still talking production. We still, we talk about some of the new cats on there. Something that's bugged out. I remember Glamour Life. As a '90s hip hop head, I'm listening to that. Like, yeah, this is what I'm waiting. We love violins in the '90s. We love violins and haunting keys. And so a beat like that makes you feel like, oh, it's a serious song. I remember reading Armageddon said the posse cut Glamour Life was supposed to be over that Caribbean Connection beat first. And they all decided Glamour Life was harder. And then he said, looking back, he thinks Glamour Life is whack.
Really?
So I'm like, damn, that's a hot take right there. That's a hot take.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear that. Glamour Life, that's one of my favorites right there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's probably that East Coast in us, because
probably
it sounds cinematic. It sounds like a movie, and it's supposed to be the cruel kind of mafioso.
The energy is crazy.
Yeah. And when I hear like Caribbean Connection, they're both loops. Both beats are just simple sample loops. The production, they didn't really do. Young Lord didn't do a lot to Caribbean Connection, and LES didn't do a lot to Glamour Life, but sometimes you don't need a lot.
I was just gonna say that sometimes you don't need it. Yeah. Pretty nice combination of producers for this first debut album.
Yeah, for sure. And the kind of sounds, we talk about the range of sounds that we're gonna hear on here. So some unorthodox sounds and some familiar sounds, which the best albums usually have a mix of both. Something that takes you into new territory and something that's just enough to reel you in, right? So when I think about how Boomerang, for example, is a beat that V.I.C. did, and he was talking about how that beat is a 6-bar count, and it's a simple sample. If you ever hear the original sample, this song is actually sampled twice on the album. It's a French song called Le Bracelet or something like that. And it's a flute, but the way that V.I.C. adds the wah-wah that warps the sound and makes it a darker track, it has a few movements. And I always thought that was such a standout beat because it matches the mood of what Pun was doing on that track. And so that represents one of the more experimental tracks to me, while you get something like Caribbean Connection, pretty straightforward sample, pretty safe. It sounds like something Wyclef would have produced, even though Young Lord produced it.
Right.
What else can we say about the sounds on this album? The horns on You Came Up.
Another one of my favorites.
I thought it was genius. I thought Pun was doing what the Beatnuts always do, where it's like a nod to Latin roots without being like cliche. They would always do like some Latin jazz kind of sample, and that's what that was. And I remember Joe. I read somewhere Joe was like he hated it. He thought it was a joke. It was a little. It was a risk. It was a risk because I was just talking about this in the Queen Latifah episode when we were talking about the Black Rain album. The horn, the jazz horn in particular, had been kind of an outdated instrument in hip hop after the early 90s. It's like
Okay.
you gotta really know what you're doing if you're gonna use them super jazzy sounds in the mid to late 90s.
Right. But it worked.
Even to
worked.
the day.
It worked well on that song to me because it again, it's kind of without thinking about it too much. You know, you do have someone that's representing the Latin community also. You know what I mean? And if you give it that flavor, like it was, you know what I liked about it so much was that they didn't go too far into trying to fuse, like, let's say, Latin music into the hip hop. They gave it like enough of that, you know, they gave it just the right amount that it's still a nod to it, but it still was hip hop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, and it goes with everything that Minnesota was saying. It's how Pun saw himself. Pun saw himself as the bridge. He's like, this is a no-brainer. I'm not even trying to. I don't have to try to represent anything. Me breathing represents that, right? It's
Right.
not.
I can't remember the lyric exactly, but I know he says that part. He's like, "Yo, I'm like a mixture of Coogee Rap, Pac, something, something, and a twist of Mark Anthony."
Mark Anthony, right?
You know what I mean?
So by the time he does it on the second album, it's not out of character because it's like, okay, he already set the stage for it. Now you get 100%, and it doesn't sound like I'm trying to ride off of that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I said. The Beat Nuts always did it well. Props to Juju and Les for always incorporating that without it being like, oh, here's this salsa beat that we're gonna rap to. You know, it's like, no, we just gonna give you something you probably never even heard of, like
off the books.
Yeah. Or if to this day, if you go to TikTok, kids keep using "Shakabo."
Oh yeah.
Right.
Right.
So that's how it's done. Right?
Nice.
You getting a range of sounds here. Speaking of Beat Nuts, Juju said he was itching for the chance to do a dark, grimy beat, and that's what Pun wanted. And that beat sounds like an intro. RZA gave a very RZA beat. Showbiz gave a very Showbiz beat.
Yeah. What do you think about the RZA one? Because, like you said, he gave a very RZA type of production, but it kind of, I guess, because of who was rhyming off of it. You know what I mean? Like, let's put it like this: if you didn't have Inspector Deck on there, and RZA did that beat, and you only had Pun rhyming off of it, you might not really think if it was a RZA beat.
You think so? I think like you said, it falls in line with the album, which we're gonna talk about in the next dimension. So it's like, I see what you mean, how it blends so well that it could have been Young Lord or Showbiz. It has that rawness. It actually, I remember it being kind of really a glimmer of hope because I had heard some lackluster RZA production within that last year, and that was a callback to the sound that you want from RZA.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but think about this. You had Domingo, right? Who, for the most part, if you listen to some of his stuff, you could kind of, he has a lot of those type of guys had a signature sound, right?
Right.
Which to me, Domingo had, the RZA had, LES is a little, he's a little more, I don't know if I could say he has necessarily a signature sound, but he's also someone, he does, you know what I mean? But like, who else did you have on there? Showbiz, right? Very DITC-ish type of, but it didn't stand out like that to me. You know what I mean?
Really?
It didn't, because if you listen to Dream Shatterer, you listen to the whole album. How can I say? If you listen to Nas Illmatic, you could pick out the Primo beat right away, right? You could pick out the Pete Rock beat right away. If you don't read the credits on Big Pun's album, Capital Punishment, you might be able to pick out maybe the Beat Nuts, maybe, and only because you're making the connection, it's Pun, the beat. You know what I mean? I
Right.
think they all did a very well job of giving Pun his identity, and not so much like it's. You know what I mean? Does that you don't see
Ooh,
it that way?
you going somewhere
Too
heavy
deep?
there. Yeah,
I'm
I see
sorry.
it. I didn't think about this before you brought that up. So it's food for thought for sure. Damn.
Because think about it.
They,
You had the young up and coming ones. You can't say like, oh, that song was a little.
right, right.
The young up and coming ones, the beats was hitting just as hard.
They did give pretty open beats for Pun to do his thing. Dream Shatterer is really a piece of music on its own. If you just let that instrument play, it just takes you. And this album is a mix. According to all the background stories, it's a mix of Pun asking producers to hold beats for him, and then some producers making beats with him in mind. Like the Parental Discretion, they said Showbiz made that specifically for Pun. You came up, Pun wanted that beat, Joe didn't like it. So these are things that he was holding.
Rockwaller.
With Rockwaller, he might be the one that deviates from his I can't even say signature sound, because this was the year of his emergence. This was the year that he came through the game and became a name. Right. But he gave one kind of beat that you would know just off the top, like, oh yeah, that's Rottweiler. It's those electronic video game type sounds. But then he did You Came Up, which makes me think that Pun picked that sample out and was like, yo, I want to sample this Latin jazz horn and just make that, because no one would ever know that that's Rottweiler unless you read the credits or heard him say it.
Right. And then the what did you think about the Super Lyrical? Not too crazy about that one. So, do you think it wasn't the best beat to have someone like Pun and Black Thought rock off of?
Not at all. I appreciate that he did the switch ups. By the time they get to the third verse, he does a little beat shift.
Yeah.
Right. But it's I never hear anybody talk about the production of that song. I hear people talk about
Pun and Black Thought.
Right, the Black Thought and Pun back and forth, but I never hear anyone talk about that beat. But like I said, as Rottweiler is making his name for being the electro sound producer guy of the 90s, it falls right in line with the rest of his catalog, so it makes sense that you get that. It's the You Came Up that really is the standout from his catalog. Having all that said about the production and the range of sounds you're gonna get, what would you give this on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats for the quality of the production? 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest.
I'm gonna say 4.
4. Nice.
I'm gonna say 4.
So that takes us to dimension 2, the cohesiveness of the production. So how does it all flow together, song for song? This album is an album. We're talking about one of the longest albums I remember in the 90s. For a minute, Raekwon's album had held the record at like 18 tracks. This blew it out the water. If we take the skits out, then we're down about 16 or 17 songs.
Something like that, yeah.
Right. So how do we feel about the flow of the album? You mentioned before how it all kind of goes together. You think from start to finish, this is an album that flows?
Yeah, I think so. Because honestly speaking, for the way, how we came up as far as albums, right? Being, it was always like, we always used to rate it by if you didn't have to fast forward, right, on the tapes and stuff like that. So to me, yeah, this is an album that I could put on from beginning to end and not really feel like, oh, let me skip over this one. Because to me personally, even my least favorite song, I still enjoy it.
Got you. So yeah, I feel like, they said Pun in his head already had things mapped out. He had time to work on this album. It wasn't a rush kind of thing. He knew he was up next. He knew he had this record deal, and he plotted who he wanted to work with for each song, which beats, and what direction he wanted to go. So I think it's no happenstance or no coincidence that the title track comes where it does. If you had the tape back in the day, then it's the first song on the second half of the album, right? So Capital Punishment, it leads side B. the intro is the intro. He uses the intro from Fresh, which was genius. Somebody had to do it, and it
Yo,
gets the little chubby, Latino kid,
Chucky, Chucky.
Chucky, right, to
That
represent the big chubby Latino dude taking over the game, and it's just it's the perfect lead off. Nobody got to use that movie clip but him. It was great, and then you come in with your dark beats, and it's followed with lighter beats. We could argue that Super Lyrical is a lighter beat compared to something like Beware, and then when you get to Still Not a Player, and then the next song after that is it's dark again with Dream Shatter. So you'll see that all throughout the album, this dance of, okay, just when you need something a little grimier, it's time. Then you need to soften it up. We hit you with a Caribbean connection. We hit you with You Came Up. Then we get dark again. So all throughout, there's no lopsided imbalance going on in this album. So shout out to Pun, execution, and Joe as the executive producer not getting in the way, and the whole team at Loud, because they saw the vision. And with any classic album, there has to be a vision. It's the difference between what makes an album with this many songs sound like a compilation instead of a body.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree, man. I think it was very well executed. Just to what you were saying, the thought process, the way they sat down and planned everything out.
With those skits.
Yeah.
The thing is, this is always my gripe with skits. Personally, I think in the process of making an album, artists think it's cute. It makes sense in the process, but I don't think a lot of them think long term of how this will age as a body of work. This one, I don't know how the uncensored skit with Funkmaster Flex lasted over time, or how the first Pack in the Mac where Pun just shoots up the place.
One,
super violent, and then the sex skit. This is back in the 90s where every album had to have a sex skit. Ever since Biggie did it, everyone started doing it. And those things don't really last the test of time, and they kind of do create a little diminishing quality. So that might be the only chip away when we start thinking about the sequencing.
That's true, because we have been talking more about the song selections, right? We didn't talk about the skits. So to add on to what you're saying, I think for me personally, the skits mainly worked when the songs on the album, I don't want to say that they told the story, but that the skits kind of piggybacked off whatever the song that just either finished or is getting ready to start. Like it ties into it. You know what I mean? As opposed to just like this one to me felt like, I don't know, we just having fun. We kind of taped ourselves joking around and doing something. Let's throw that skit, let's throw that in as a skit.
Right.
It sounded like some random stuff that they just kind of threw in there for fun.
Make a version of the album without the skits. Like this album without the skits would have a whole different feel to it. It's even a musical intermission. I think track 4 is just, it's called Intermission. It's just like 30 seconds of a beat before Dream Shatter. So it's some of the choices made on here are interesting. What are you giving this on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats when we think about the cohesiveness?
I'm gonna say 4.
4, okay.
Because really, it's the skits. If it didn't have the skits, for me, it would be a perfect 5.
Got you.
Except for the first one. Except for the intro, I'm not really considering a skit. It's an intro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe we don't even talk about that. And it's a classic movie, classic line. So that to me, I would leave. But the other skits, if it didn't have that, I would give it a perfect 5.
It's the perfect intro. All right, so that takes us to dimension 3, the overall mood and tone of the album. What is the mood and tone that this album gives? Not the mood and tone that you feel, but the mood and tone is presented. I'd say it's a very straightforward kind of mood and tone. It's like I'm here. I told you I was coming. Y'all didn't listen. I'm here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was in your face. I'm making a statement. I'm letting everybody know what I can do. And it was loud and clear. making a
Yeah.
statement. I'm here. I'm letting you guys know what I can do. I'm versatile. I'm very, I can get lyrical when I want to be, and I can make songs,
Yeah.
radio friendly type songs as well too.
Yeah, I think we try not to compare albums on this channel, but I have to since he only has two, right? You get to the second album, the Yeah Baby album. Um, he's outright saying it. He's like, look, I want y'all to know I am the nicest. He says that on a couple tracks. Like that's what he's outpoured in. In Fat Joe's book, the Book of Jose, he talks about how that was Pun's feeling going into that. He felt jerked from that Grammy that he thought he was going to get that year, and he's like, "I'm out for blood," right? So they didn't get to finish that album, so I don't think that album really captures that, but he is saying it. This album, he's not saying it, he's proving it. I think that it's interesting. He does less saying it and more proving it, and this is more just the Arrival album. I'm repping Latinos, I'm repping blacks, I'm repping the Bronx, and I'm repping being the best rapper. But he's not making those claims at like the beginning of the song. He's just letting the song speak for himself.
Yeah, he's not like bragging about it, boasting about it. He's just doing it.
Everything you said plus that. And so
right.
I think that's the mood and tone. He wants you to know I can go to these dark places and these light places. I represent all of that. I'm trying to bring balance here. So something to consider on the scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Well, what you giving this for mood and tone?
For mood and tone, I'm going to give it a 5.
5. Woo! You did that. All right. So that takes us to dimension 4, and this is the repetition factor. So song distinction versus repetition of words and sounds. So we talked about how diverse the beats are. Are there any sounds on here that get repetitive? Any tracks that you feel like sounded like another track beat-wise?
Not that stands out to me, no. I actually would say it was very different. I think every track, even though again, we keep saying that the album sounded very cohesive, but I think every track had its own feel to it. No, I think they did a very good job in not making it sound too repetitive or similar. Yeah.
Cool. So then we jump to the words. How repetitious does Pun get with the word? So I always point out that rappers, this comes in 2 ways. There's branding, there's intentional repetition where you're repping something, so you're trying to drill that into the ears of the listeners.
Right.
Like you're gonna hear Terror Squad a lot of courts because they're branding that and
right.
leaving their mark there. You're gonna hear the Bronx because he wants to rep the Bronx. But then there's the other style of repetition where it's lazy. You're like, oh, this rapper just ran out of things to say. I'm repeating the same thing. So when we had Kula Rula on for the Lost Boys episode, I pointed out how much Mr. Cheeks kind of said the same thing.
You had him on?
Yeah, that was he's my first guest. He's my first guest from the channel.
I'm sorry, we can edit this part out, but you know what's funny, man? I saw him post something. Yo, I didn't realize that was you. That's I know him since like 2008, bro.
Oh, that makes sense. He's cool.
That's like my man.
That's fair. He's fair. Yeah.
Oh shit, that's what it was. Now I gotta go back and I saw him post that, and I kind of watched the clip of what he posted and didn't realize that was you.
Dude, now that I think about it, he might be the first place where I saw y'all. So that makes sense. He's the bridge.
That's I've been to his studio, man, and hung out with him. I know, like I said, since 2008 to now.
You want to talk about humble, man? That's a humble dude, man.
Yeah, he's very humble. Yeah. And, oh shit, that's so cool, man.
Oh yeah, so I was saying, Mr. Cheeks, I think that style of repetition is a little bit more laziness. Like I don't know what to say. I'm just gonna name everybody in the group. Speak nice and freaky time. Like it's a lazy repetition. And Kula told me most of the stuff they were doing was freestyling. So it makes sense. When you freestyle, you kind of repeat things out of a sense of I don't know what else to say. With Pun, you're not getting that. It's gonna be intentional repetition. The only thing I think what Pun does kind of there's repetition of certain ideas. He pulls a lot from Scarface. He on like 5 songs, he mentions things from the movie Scarface. He's either
Yeah.
quoting it or mentioning Tony Montana on like 5 songs throughout the album, which is a lot. Even though it's a big album, it's a lot of songs. It's still a lot of Tony Montana references. So
Yeah.
that's
Now, it's funny you mentioned that too, because I do remember noticing that a lot. And then I didn't realize till later on that they actually had, or I don't know if it was maybe more Fat Joe's man or whatever, but they had someone that went by Tony Montana.
yeah.
Like they had somebody in the crew that actually went by that name, or took on that moniker, but there was an actual person, not just. So sometimes I'm like, damn, is he kind of tying it in because of?
No,
You know what I
it's
mean?
Tone Montana. Yeah, I just finished your Fat Joe's book. Tone Montana was Joey's best friend before he got in the rap game, and he died right after his first album came out. So that's before Pun was in the picture. And Pun is very clear when Pun is mentioned in Tony Montana, he's talking about the movie. He's like, oh, it's all in the eyes, Chico. Like when Tone gassed Sosa for the coca, and then of course my favorite line where he's like, it's Big Pun, the one and only son of Tony Montana. You ain't promised mañana in the rotten manzana. Come on, pana. Yeah.
So you said that he didn't know the Fat Joe's man?
No,
He
Fat
didn't know
Joe's
him at
man
all.
died right when his first album came out. He said he died right before the Flo Joe video shoot. He died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for
He's
that.
a part of it.
Thank you for clearing that up, because I thought that there was a double thing with that, why Pun was mentioned in the name so much.
Oh no, yeah. He said him and Tone Montana actually who started Terror Squad. They're
Right.
founders of it, yeah. But
Yeah.
I thought he was, before I read the book, I thought he was much deeper in the history too. I thought he was riding throughout the 90s. I didn't know he died right at the beginning of the rap career.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
yeah, but I mean he does it. Matter of fact, if I go back to the last dimension when we talk about the mood and tone, I think Pun was trying to do what a lot of rappers think they're doing in the 90s, where they're like, oh, I wanted it to feel like Scarface. I think Pun was trying to tap into that and be like, bring that Scarface movie energy to rap.
Okay.
When we think about the movie Scarface, especially if you've watched it as a young person, if you watched it in different decades of your life, you'll feel different ways about the movie.
Right.
Growing up, everybody always said it's a classic. I watched it again as an adult, and I'm like, this is not really a good movie. Al Pacino is acting his ass off, but the movie itself is not good. But it's Al Pacino's performance. I'm like, basically, it's a bad guy who was bad from the beginning. He was killing from the beginning. He has a crush on his sister. He kills his best friend. He turns his white girlfriend out, betrays his connect, and dies. It's like, yo, there's no message, there's no character development, there's no arc. It's just Al Pacino's acting that sells that movie.
Yeah, man, don't ruin the movie for me, man.
Yo, watch it again, I promise
No,
you.
I have. No, I'm joking. I mean, I get what you're saying, and you're right, but I again, it goes back to what you just said. It depends who watches it and what time and whatever, right? For me, I saw, watching it as a young kid back in those times. One of the reasons why I fell in love with Al Pacino, you know what I mean? And then started digging and looking and finding his old stuff when he was young, was because of that movie. So it's going to remain a classic in my book.
Oh, yeah. It's always a classic. It's always a classic.
Is it cheesy when you look at it now and watch it? Yeah. But is it? It's still a classic, man.
It's a classic. It's just not good writing. I'd say that. Like my favorite movie of all time is Carlito's Way. So you compare Carlito with Tony. I'm like, oh man, I felt the pain in every angle that was going on in his life. The relationship with his lawyer, the relationship with his team, trying to do right. Like you felt it. It's so
maybe
deep.
It made me hate John Leguizamo, but I liked I liked Carlito's Way.
So yeah, I mean that's probably the only pockets his Scarface references. It's another thing that gets repeated. I'm sorry. He does throughout the album, not just him, but you will hear talk of not observing the street rule of no women, no children. They talk there's a few lines throughout this album where they're like, yeah, your wife, your kids can get it. I'll power drive your daughter. Yeah. Even on the Glamour Life hook, right? Blow up the kids and the wife. And then
Blow up
Triple
the
Say.
kids and the wife. Right.
Triple Say says something about your wife and your daughter. There's a few lines throughout the album where that code is not observed. They're trying to show how ruthless they can be.
What did they call that now? Like Eminem, that would say these like
shock value.
Really shock value. Exactly. Thank you. So it was something I feel along those lines, like you forget that this is how bad we are.
Right.
Right. You're right. I forgot about that.
So when you factor that in, repetition, words and sounds, but as far as actual
lyrics,
words, Pun doesn't run out of words. He has a hell of a vocabulary. So repetition, what you giving this on the scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats? 5 means it wasn't repetitive at all. 1 means it was super repetitive.
Jeez, man, I never thought about it this way. Okay. Damn, that's hard because if you take the overall body of what he's saying, like you said, he doesn't run out of words. So it's like, in that perspective, I would probably give him about I would be very close to giving him a 5.
You want to do a 4.5?
I would say, damn, man, let's say 4.5. Let's say 4.5, just because you're right, and I do agree with what you were saying.
Okay, so then that takes us to dimension 5. We talk about ratios here: the amount of songs versus the amount of content. How much topical, substantial stuff are we getting on this album compared to how many? So 24 tracks. We already said 16 or 17 of these are really the songs, and so out of 16 to 17 songs, we feel like we get a fair balance of Pun talking about things,
topics.
I'd say a good half of the album.
Half? I would say half.
Yeah, whether topical doesn't have to be deep, right? Just the fact that he's talking about, I'm not a player. He stays on that topic for the entire song. He stays focused on it, right? So you are getting that.
Okay.
And I'd go as far to say even in his braggadocio, Pun is such a mastermind that he delineates the type. He's got street braggadocio, then he has rap braggadocio. There's about 3 tracks on there where it's specifically about rap, like being a threat in rap. And then there's about 3 songs where it's like being a threat in the streets. Like You Ain't a Killer, that's not a song to other rappers. That's a song, that's a street song, right? But Dream Shatterer, that's a rap song. He's talking about battle rapping. Yeah. He's talking about I let you rhyme to the Benjamins beat. I'm better than you. Super lyrical. That's a rap. That's a rap bragging. So I think he was very deliberate with how he broke each song down. So even though those
dope, man. This is really dope, man. I really like what you said. I love it. I love it, man. So do we get an even balance? Damn, man. Yeah. So this is really dope how you come up with this, because it really makes sense. Like when you label, because a lot of times you hear somebody say like, "Oh, this album's a classic," but what exactly are you basing the fact that it's a classic?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I feel that some of us, and I say us because of our time, I think it was sort of because of the time that we came up, it was kind of a no-brainer almost that we kind of knew what made a classic without doing this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Without really doing it. We just knew, like, God. But fast forward to now, this is a dope way that people should evaluate what people now, when you have the Kendricks, the J. Coles and this and that, and they're like, yo, is that a classic album?
Yes. Thank you for putting it. Because
dope.
in every other arena, this is how they do it. Movie critics will go back and watch Citizen Kane and still hold it up to and see if it still measures up. Sports analysts, they'll watch an old Larry Bird and Magic game and just no holds barred still measure it. They're not gonna be like, oh, for its time. They're gonna be like, no, this was still a good game.
I hate to, because we're doing this and you're saying these things are like what the category we're on right now. Man, this is awesome. So okay, I get. So are we giving it 1 to 5 on this then?
1 to 5, yeah, on the ratio.
1 to 5. 1 to 5 on the ratio. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
4.5.
He's so dangerous when he does his rap stuff and his street stuff, but it's like his rap stuff could be street and his street stuff could be rap. You know what I mean? In my opinion,
he does.
You know what I mean? As far as his delivery and his aggressiveness with it. So I'll leave that half because to me, I would lump that in the same category.
It's crazy because he does like a third thing too, where some of the street songs he'll mix with a sense of conscious, like his conscious talking to him. And so he starts blending to kind of like the political and street at the same time. He does that on 3 songs too, I think. He does that on Boomerang, he does that on Parental Discretion, and he does that on Capital Punishment. And he does it on a little bit on You Ain't a Killer. So I mean, he's mixing sometimes, but he definitely is real distinct about when he's talking to other rappers and when he's talking to street dudes. And I thought that's clever. And I don't see enough rappers doing that. If you're gonna do both street rap and rap,
right? So
cool. 4.5. That takes us to Dimension 6, the features. Now we can talk about who all is on this album. We got Miss Jones on the album. Who else we got?
Well, we mentioned Black Thought. Of course, we have the home team. Cuban and Triple Sace and those guys.
I thought it was.
It's interesting that
he's got everybody from Terror Squad twice, except for Cuban Link and Stace, which are his direct crew, the Full Eclipse mob. I thought that was interesting. Armageddon does the hook on Boomerang, and Prospect raps and does the hook on Capital Punishment, and he's on the Rain of Sun joint, which also has Dead Prez. The Rain and the Sun is what it's called. Shout out.
Right.
He's got Nori. Nori's on it.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. Nori. How can I forget Nori?
Wyclef. We got Busta Rhymes. We got Prodigy. We got Infect the Deck.
And he has Joe.
He has Joe.
Still Not a Player.
Yep.
And is that it?
Yeah, I mean, we said Rock Raiders doing the scratches.
Rock Raiders doing the scratches.
The question here is always, do the features help or hurt the album? We can talk about each feature and break that down. So yeah, I mentioned, let's talk about the Terror Squad features first, because this is more or less their introduction. I don't know if anybody knew Triple Sace before this record. Cuban Link got some shine with Pun the year before on the Beat Nuts album, so his name is known. But it's always been debated what this crew could have been, and this song was supposed to kind of give you the first glimpse of what a Terror Squad would have sounded like in the game. So, Glamour Life, what do you think about this feature?
I love it. I love it. I love yo. I mean, just to so you get an idea, like, I liked all of them. I liked Armageddon. I liked Triple Sace. I liked Cuban. I liked them. I was really, really looking forward to like seeing what they were gonna do. You know what I mean? It really like I'm gonna honestly say that I was really one of those that when everything went sour and all of that stuff happened, I was like, damn. Like to this day, sometimes every once in a blue, I'll be like, damn man, why doesn't Triple Sace do it? Like, how come he's not doing anything? You know what I mean? Or Armageddon, like, so Glamour Life. To answer your question, I loved it.
The illest part about Terror Squad, I remember just from that little representation on the song, and I didn't discover this until I listened to the Don Carter Gina album. I was like, oh, they all represent different cultures of Latino,
Dominican, yeah,
like
the
Triple
Dominican,
Face is Dominican,
yep,
Cuban Link is Cuban,
yep.
Armageddon is black, and then Fat Joe and Pun are Puerto Rican, or as Minnesota just taught most of the audience here. Pun was
Cuban
Cuban
and
and Puerto Rican, which is Joe is
same as
also
Fat
Cuban and
Joe,
Puerto
yeah,
Rican. Yeah.
yeah.
So that representation was unprecedented. It wasn't just a whole Puerto Rican squad, a whole Dominican crew. Like my crew, my rap crew, shout out to the Balance. They were Dominican and one Colombian, and then I'm the black dude in it. So like we were supposed to be like the second coming of Terror Squad, right? But
Really, okay.
but yeah, I thought that was interesting. Triples. I also like that everybody kind of had their own style, even though it could be argued that Cuban, Pun, and Joe kind of had the same flow on this particular song, and we'll talk about that more in the next category. But they definitely. I think this song is where the argument can be made for whether or not Pun wrote a Joe verse or not. You hear Joe doing a style that was more Pun flow, a lot more stacked syllables and switch ups.
Okay.
So I mean, the question mark. We'll put a question mark on that. But Sace and Armageddon, they kept their own. They really stuck to their own little style, which
their own style.
It might kind of look like it's whacker in comparison to people spitting like, bar. Triple Sace is a little slowed down. Armageddon's a little slowed down.
I thought it worked well, man. Like I thought it worked well. It
did.
Again, man. I thought, yeah, I liked it a lot.
Different voices, different textures.
Different voice. Yep.
It blended. Joe's gonna come in with his yelling. No, it's the Dawn Cartagena.
Right. Fat Joe always used to come like he was like I always picture like a King Kong or Godzilla. Like he always sounded like he was coming in the studio like stomping. That's how I always pictured that every time he would jump on the track. But like you said, Armageddon had his own type of sound.
It was pretty brilliant that they just saved Prospect to come on the next track. As soon as that song ends, Prospect's on the next song. That's your introduction to him. And he's got a different style too. I like that he didn't try to keep up with Pun. He just did his verse is actually slower. He's like, how you like that? It's Pun and Prospect. He's not even trying to do the multiple syllable stacking like Cuban Link and Joe did. So.
And that's why I think I liked it a lot, because they all just had their own identity. And we're coming off a time where there was a lot of groups. You know what I mean? We come out from like Wu-Tang and a lot of groups, and so like here you have them, and I'm like, wow, cool. They all sound pretty good so far. I couldn't say that there was any one of them that I didn't like their verses, for example. So I'm like, wow, this maybe could be something. So yeah.
What's funny, I was reading a little before this interview, Armageddon was saying that there's a little bit of friction between him and Pun. And so I noticed on the In the Tres Leches, Pun shouts out the whole squad except for Armageddon. He's like, Cuban Link, Triple Sace, Fat Joe, what? Prospect. And Armageddon winds up, he says he was like the hook man, the go-to hook person within the crew. So that's how he winds up doing the hook on Boomerang. But he said he didn't get credited on there. And he's like, I don't want to think that Pun left me out. But, there was friction at the time. Shout out to Armageddon, man. We got to get Armageddon on either your show, my show.
I would love to see what get his story and man, any one of those guys, to be honest with you. But Armageddon would be dope.
Shout out to Armageddon. Sure. We don't hear from you often. In Fat Joe's book, he said they lost contact, and he said he doesn't know why. There's no real reason. And Armageddon is everything I've seen him speak on. He seems really transparent. He's like, yeah, that beat was whack. Yeah, we had friction. Most rappers try to sugarcoat stuff. So shout out. But okay, so that's Terror Squad representation, right? We talk about Fat Joe on Twins. Now that's the song where I think it shows that Joe is rapping in his own pattern. He wasn't trying to use Pun style, and they kind of were complementing each other. He kept up. I'll say that. Joe, if he plays the Dre role, that's cool, because nobody really remembers deep cover for what Dre did. They remember it as the introduction to Snoop Doggy
Right.
Dogg, right?
Right.
And so with Pun is playing Snoop, that works. But they actually did more of a tag team back and forth. And I remember gaining respect for Fat Joe for keeping up with Pun.
I agree. I remember the first time I heard the song when the beat came on and everything. I was kind of like, like, what are they doing? Like, what are they doing? And when they started rhyming, and I hear the back and forth, like, it was.
I first heard it on a DJ Clue mixtape, and so I thought that's where it was going to live and die. It was the norm for rappers to rap over other rappers'
like
beats.
Somebody, right.
It wasn't the norm to rap over another rapper's beat on your album. So I was like, this is on the album? But I think it just became such a blow-up street single, that it had to be put on the album. They're like, there's no way. It's so popular. And from the moment I heard Joe do it, when he freaked the Snoop line, "Creep with me," as I cruise in my Beamer, all the kids in the hood, or just when he did the line, "I support Pun in anything he does, anything he loves. My brother from another mother, sent from the above." I'm like, oh, he's keeping up. He's keeping up.
Yeah. Sometimes it makes you be like, ooh, that's Joe.
Right, we forget Joe. Joe been doing this for a while. Joe, and I have to give Joe his flowers, because he used to be my bar in the rap game for someone who stays and gets progressively better each outing. A lot of time we see our old pros or our vets decline.
Kind of goes backwards.
Hunger is always the deciding factor, right? And Joe always, I never forget reading this, to shoot this back when I used to read The Source and XXL. And Joe said Pun would always taunt him and tease him and be like, "You're limited, you're mad limited." And that made him want to write harder. So I feel like on this song, that's where you hear that. He's like, "I'm going to keep up. You ain't going to kill me. You might body the song, but you ain't going to kill me." And me and you came up in a time where feature was a feature. When people heard K Solo on Knick Knack Paddywhack, no one was saying, "Oh, he killed EPMD." They were just like, "Oh, this is a good feature."
It's a good feature.
Ever since Renegade, like when Jay-Z and Eminem, it became this thing of, oh, who killed who on whose song? It's like, whoa, why can't it just be a feature?
But that only really happened because of the whole Nas and Jay-Z thing. Because nobody was really comparing them two as far as who killed who until Nas said Eminem killed your own track. Then people started going back like, let me go back and listen. Because I'm not going to lie, when I first heard it, I was just like, oh, wow, Jay-Z, Eminem, both, it was a dope song. And then when I heard that, it was like, man, did he? And you go back, and then, but then it started what you're saying.
Then it started. Now we can't hear one guest feature without being like, we kind of got him. So you take Wyclef on this. Everybody keeps talking about how hard Wyclef rapped on this song. When I hear that, it makes me understand that a lot of people did not pay attention to the Fugees album. And this is the whole reason this channel was created, because people get caught up in the image of people rather than what they do. If you listen to the Fugees album, Wyclef rap like that all over that album.
All the time.
Right. And it's not really convincing, like his Ready or Not verse, he's rapping about playing with guns. I want to play with pelicans from here to, right? But no one pays that attention. No one's thinking that Wyclef is doing gunplay, right? But I felt like he felt compelled to rap harder because he's with Pun. But to me, as somebody that listened to Wyclef, it wasn't out the norm for Wyclef. It's not like he did he keep up with Pun? No. No.
I think that was, to be honest with you now, thinking about it, that was a little, like, it made sense, but was it a good feature?
Pun was quoted on MTV as saying he specifically wanted to feature Wyclef to show the Caribbean connection, and because Wyclef was a black rapper that always showed hella love to the Latin community. And so he's like, he wanted to show that love back. And I was like, damn, that's a dope reason, because Wyclef is big on that too.
That was dope.
Made sense.
I'm talking about as far as the concept was good. But I'm talking about